right, what's up, y'all? Happy Sunday night. We've got another full slate of awesome guests for our Refounding Fathers show. So, starting from the left and working right, I am your host, Wes Seiler. Happy to be joining you tonight. And then my good friend Christopher Souza, representing the liberal side, and he always does that very well, at least in my opinion. So, great to have you back, Chris. Welcome. How you doing?
Doing really well. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It is very hot. It is hot as hell down here in Florida. Yeah, I was walking outside at like 8 o'clock in the morning the other day at one of the little outdoor markets in our town, and I was sweating within 15 seconds. I was like, oh yeah, it's July in Florida. I forget about that.
Yeah.
Like it's brutal, but that's where you got to jump in the ocean, stay cool, constantly be drinking water. But otherwise, doing great. Everybody's happy. So, and then my good friend Kyle Walton is a regular every week on our show. So happy to have you back, Kyle, representing the libertarian side.
Yeah, thanks, man. Glad to be here.
And then it's always a pleasure to have Megan with us. Megan is a recent addition to our show, and she helps me out with the conservative side. And I love getting your perspective and getting the different takes that you bring and the debates that we have. So welcome, Megan. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, you too. I like the facial hair.
So, I get to, y'all need to watch out because, this entire time that we've been doing this program, I've been in the military, and so I had to be careful of what I say and not link anything to my experience or what I've seen or done or incriminate anybody. Like, oh, I don't know the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for saying dumb things. I couldn't say that. I couldn't really say that, and now I can. So now watch.
He's off the leash now, boys. He's off the leash.
It's going to get
and
wild.
Now,
it's going to get
and
wild.
now you're going back to your hippie roots by growing the beard. Right?
Is that what that is? This is the first time in like 10 years. And of course, like I said, I'm doing this in July in Florida, so you know that I mean it. It is really hot. And you got to teach me how to do this, Chris. But yes, I'm enjoying not having to shave.
Interestingly enough, Wes, I'm in corporate America, and I'm more tethered than anyone here. So that's interesting enough.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
you are the establishment, Kyle.
With freedom comes responsibility, and I've got to figure out how to handle this. And I don't know.
Right.
It's going to take a little time, but I haven't lost any sense of patriotism. But I have gained a few rights, or at least access to them. So I'm excited about it. But I try to keep it fair on the show. Try to enjoy being your host and framing this stuff for you guys so that y'all can sort it out. So we've got a lot to do, but I figure we got to start where it's fun, which is our meme of the week, and we've got a bunch that y'all shared. So I love going through these. So I'm going to throw these all up on the screen. So for those watching live, let us know which one that you enjoy. But take a look at these different memes because you got some winners this week. And I think, Kyle, you sent in most of these, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, I mean, I should send more throughout the week. These are just some kind of last minute ones I decided to share, and obviously the most appropriate ones to share. And some kind of more fun.
I have no idea what kind of circles that you delve in. I don't spend that much time.
The dark hole of libertarian Facebook group.
So Megan, which one? What's your vote there of those four? So I picked the four that I like the most that he sends every week, and I've got my opinion. But what do you think?
Oh, I think I have. Well, I like the lobster one.
I do too. Like I was gonna say that because my wife is from New Hampshire, so she introduced me to lobster, right? And I'm talking about you take the big old things and you put them into the pots and everything, and you cook them right there and crack them, and it was a whole new experience for me, but it was delicious, and so I learned what good lobster is, and then seeing that, I remember. I met my wife in Texas, and she ordered lobster from a restaurant. I was like, what are you doing? There's no lobsters for miles. And she found out the hard way what stuff like that looks like. So how about you, Chris?
I really like the Soviet gender reveal, although I'm not sure the gender reveal parties that were that explosive existed at the time of the Soviet Union, but it's still funny. I like any chance to dunk on the Black Rifle Coffee Company after seeing them bring out Kyle Rittenhouse as some kind of spokesman. I'm like, well, okay, you're definitely appealing to a very narrow market there, but it's a market that will buy.
It's actually the opposite. The owner, that's actually what the source of this meme is. They were talking about Kyle Rittenhouse this week, and the owner is done everything to distance themselves, saying anyone who supports Kyle Rittenhouse is a racist, and there won't be anyone associated with their company, which is honestly a load of baloney, which I love. We can talk about that sometime too. But yeah, anyway, that was the source of this meme. Yeah.
They
Did
are. I
not know
mean,
that.
I don't know. I imagine in California you don't see this too often, but they are all over where I live in Northwest Florida. Yeah. Like every restaurant and bar you go to, there's all kinds of Black Rifle Company signs and all things like that. So I hear you. And then Kyle, obviously, go ahead.
So I've never actually seen Black Rifle anywhere.
Really? Not in you're in Kentucky, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Mike? That surprises me. I mean, they I go to a lot of bars with military and vets and all that stuff, so we're all about it. Like we'll go out of our way. Like, oh yeah, you're not serving it. Come on, So it's in our circles. It's big. So that kind of surprised me though, because most conservatives, I have a few friends that have done work with them before, so. They like Chris was saying, there's definitely a specific market that they're appealing to, but they do it pretty well. So. And then what's that last one there of me and the boys on our way to Cuba? We're going to talk about that later on today. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So good deal. I think we got 2 votes for the lobster one. So that's our meme of the week. And then, the other topic that we talked about last week and we had a lot of fun was getting into social media and censorship. And I really appreciate Chris giving us an education on Section 230 because I didn't even know what that meant, like some weird place in government. But you really helped me understand it. And of course, Kyle and Megan did really well in that quiz, kind of going back and forth with some questions. But we didn't get a chance to get into the kind of the meat of the topic as much. But I think we have a chance to do that here for a couple minutes anyway, because it is very much in the news. This week, the White House press secretary said that senior staff were engaging with social media platforms to combat the spread of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. Getting all in there, right? Like government, Facebook working together to tell you what is true and what is not true, what to think, what not to think, what to look at, and what not to. And of course, why don't we just put them in charge of the gulags, huh? So I love this from the Babylon Bee that you shared as well. But in all seriousness, as we get into this topic, Facebook has defended itself and has said no. More than 3.3 million Americans have also used their, other tools, the vaccine finder tools to find out where and how to get a vaccine, all these good things. They do this with voting too, like they pretend like they're not swinging elections and things like, oh, no, we're just registering people to vote. It just happens to be in this place or the other. So what do you guys think about this? What do you make of this whole controversy with the White House? Chris, right, as someone who openly supports Biden, and we've talked about that, ever since he started running and all those things, specifically in relation to Trump. Would you defend this? Do you defend this policy decision, her rhetoric, and what they're doing?
I don't think it's appropriate. I didn't think it was appropriate when President Trump, said things like NBC should cancel Saturday Night Live, or, this reporter from Fox News should be fired, or this reporter from CNN should be fired. And I don't think it's appropriate coming from the Biden administration either to say, we as the government are telling you what to say and what not to say. Now, without any kind of proof of undue pressure or coercion, I don't think that this violates the First Amendment. I don't think it's illegal for the government to be saying things like this. It's an expression of their own First Amendment rights, just as it was an expression of Trump's First Amendment rights to say SNL sucks and should be taken off the air. And I do think Facebook's response was actually a little bit heartening, because I'd seen a lot of accusations that the Biden administration and Facebook were colluding to censor information, but Facebook's response doesn't sound like they're cooperating very much. It sounds like they're saying, don't tell us what to do, which as much as I think Facebook should do more to combat misinformation, especially about the pandemic, I think the response to the government when the government tells them what to do is, don't tell me what to do.
What do you think, Megan?
I don't trust that statement from Facebook. I think they're just saying it to say it, but I think that they are more closely tied than they're letting on.
There it is. I mean, there's the whole part of the public front of what Facebook does, and then there's the whole private part. And I think that we talked about that last week. That's one of my biggest frustrations, is that so many people especially in government, the elected politicians and things like that don't even have a fundamental clue of how it's running and data analytics. And I mean, this is my first frustration with a lot of conservatives, Megan, is that we will talk about gun rights and we'll talk about protecting ourselves and we will do, we will be very adamant about our property. And then we will go on to a thing like Facebook and we will give all of our data away, not even think about it, right? Like we will go on Amazon and just, right, sell our
Yeah.
digital footprint and everything else. And there's so much concern here from, the power that Facebook has and, the government potentially working with it. And so if this is anything but serious of, sincere and then pushing back, then it's terrifying. But it's already terrifying because of what they can do as a company, as a, massive power broker. Right. So probably going to get shut down right now just for saying that. They're going to shut down Refounding
Right.
Fathers.
I haven't had anything taken off, but I know several people that have,
Yeah.
had their accounts suspended, all kinds of stuff. And really for not even saying anything really bad.
Yeah.
Obviously on the conservative side, but I mean, I've seen it too much. I don't know. There's a lot of issues with that.
Sure. Roger is talking about, he just gave us our first comment and he's listing off all the things that, he couldn't talk about or they got banned. And I've had friends, liberal and conservative, both have comments taken down, have their accounts suspended for periods of time. You've seen it on Twitter as well. So very concerning, Kyle. Very concerning to see, that power used against us. So any thoughts?
Yeah, it sure is. And so this is, I mean, the Biden administration is at best unethical in this and inappropriate, and at worst, hinting at something worse. And just because, Facebook comes out with this statement doesn't mean that they're not working in tandem with the DNC in general or other DNC policy, policymakers or kind of thought think tanks or anything like that, right? This just means they're not working explicitly with the Biden administration. Look, Facebook is an extremely troublesome organization. I'm on it. I wish I could get off, but truthfully, there's so much stuff to do on there, and there's so much information being disseminated on the platform. And when you have a platform that has over 3 billion users worldwide, or close to 3 billion users wide, and this is clearly the method of choice to get your words out or your message out to the public. This is what the government does. The government chooses to use Facebook. Companies choose to operate on Facebook through advertisements, things like that. This is the main way that corporations and entities communicate with the people, aside from TV networks, things like that, which are already pretty skewed to one direction. So, at what point, and this is kind of a question I posed in our chat, and I don't really have an answer. I haven't really thought this through enough. But at what point does a platform like that become public utility? I think Chris has kind of thought through that a little bit more than I have. But I do think that it's something to be concerned about because Roger's right here. I've had comments being taken down. Groups that I'm in, pretty tame groups, have been shut down because of quote unquote extremist content, and there's nothing extremist about the content in those groups being shared. They just go against a typical left wing narrative, and so this is super troublesome. And
here's the thing too, because you're totally right, Kyle, and I agree with everything that you said, and that is a concern. Like, hey, I can't, as a user, always say the things or post the things that I want because it might be in town. Absolutely a concern. Megan said that too. But here's the next level of that, right? All Facebook has to do to be able to pervert any election that they want, if it's anywhere close, is they just remind people in a certain section of town that election day is tomorrow. And then they don't remind others. And they have done this, and this has been multiple times. Is they just, hey, we're just reminding you to vote, and then immediately, oh yeah, it sways that election, and all of a sudden, right, you've got different numbers. That's the power of data. That's the power that they've harnessed because everybody who joins Facebook is putting in their personal information, their email, all that stuff. And some people go further and they post their patterns and their habits. Like, and Google does this as well. I could give you all kinds of materials that show how these companies know you in some cases better than you know yourself in terms of your habits and what you do. So they can tell whether you're, and you can, if someone really wanted to do something, this part I don't know if it's been proven, but it's not hard to imagine. Is you just get a registered voters list, which is public record, and then you say, boom, okay, you've got the information there to be able to do all sorts of things. So companies are doing this; they're paying Facebook for it, right, to be able to do
Yep.
ads. That's obvious, and I don't have any objection to that. But Facebook itself, with the click of a button, can change an election, and by the time that you figured out the election's over, right? That is the power behind what they've done. And Zuckerberg has understood that from day one. I mean, just, read his story, watch The Social Network, any of that stuff, and you'll get kind of his backstory. So it's an enormous amount of power in the hands of, people that do we trust? Do we not trust? And that's what makes me concerned, Chris, in addition to what they've raised. So
I have to
we're all concerned about it. So I appreciate that. Go ahead, Megan. What you got?
just the term misinformation by itself, I kind of have to laugh at, because like, who gets to determine what is the misinformation?
Right.
And when they get to cut out, half of the viewpoints at their whim, if
Yep.
they want to, they're only showing one half of the viewpoints, and that in itself is misinformation, because you're only giving us, half of the view.
Right.
Drives me
Roger said
nuts.
the same thing. Yeah, his comment is exactly on point with yours. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that, Chris, as we kind of close this topic out here and we kind of get into some other topics involving government overreach and how we respond to it, that type of thing. But this whole notion, and I know we've debated it before, of what is truth, who determines truth, right? Like, where would you get that from? Right, if not from public debate, right? Who do we actually trust? Is it obvious to people? Because it doesn't seem that way. So, and that's the
Yeah,
concern.
I would say, as far as who gets to decide what counts as misinformation,
Yeah.
Facebook gets to decide what's misinformation on Facebook. Just like I get to decide what's misinformation on my property, you get to decide what's misinformation on your property. It is a problem that Facebook has so much power. It is a problem that they have so much reach and influence and can control the narrative in certain ways. I am skeptical about the claims of political discrimination. There was a Facebook post by Marjorie Taylor Greene the other day about how Facebook is censoring her, and it became one of the top Facebook posts that day. Ben Shapiro trends on Facebook and Twitter every day. So I do think those claims are a little bit overblown. I think Facebook does things that they think are going to serve their bottom line. I think Facebook and Twitter, just like all corporations, especially corporations that become very powerful, they are not making decisions based on ideology. They're certainly not making decisions based on morality. They're making decisions based on what they think is going to help them financially, which is why they kept President Trump on for so long after a huge portion of their user base asked them to ban him. They banned him on January 6th and no earlier. I think that really showed that the claims of political persecution are a little bit overblown to me. I do think that as powerful as Facebook and Twitter are, they do have responsibilities. They should be combating misinformation, but with a platform that huge, there is no way to do that totally fairly and consistently. It's a problem. I don't know what the solution is.
Right. So, like, if I was a politician and I was running to bring accountability and to be able to make sure that they were doing things in an ethical manner and all those things, right? And I had to use Facebook in order to get elected, right? Or even if I didn't, right? What would be, just think about the incentives there, right? From Facebook. Like, hey, Wes is out there running for office against us, right? Wanting to be able to tell people what's going on behind the scenes, right? And his election's tomorrow. What are we going to do about that? Anything? What do you guys want to do, right? Like, being able to make that decision somewhere in California, right? And us have to live with it. So that's what's scary, is when me as a conservative, personally, I tend to think about things in terms of how do you keep power manageable, right? And whether it's government or business, when it gets to this level, beyond control, that's really what's scary, and that's what leads to stuff like this. This was kind of the segue that I wanted to talk about, is what's going on in Cuba. So we've got a few minutes left. I really want to introduce this topic because it's so pressing, and I think in some ways it's related, because people have had enough in Cuba. They've had enough of the government, and Megan posted this. And I thought it was really interesting, kind of bringing up you know, their ties to, you know, American nationalism or the flag or some of the beliefs that we hold dear. But yeah, I want to get your initial thoughts here in the 5 minutes that we have left of Cuba, and specifically kind of put you on the hot seat here for a second, Chris, with where you stand. I mean, I think there's a lot of agreement. You know, we've already had a lot tonight on stuff, but it always gets interesting to me when socialists like this lady here are talking about people's rights and self determination and mobilizing and grassroots and all that stuff for the sake of socialism, but then here we've got a situation when it seems like they're doing it for the opposite. And do we support them or do we not? Is Cuba a fair regime or is it not? Right. So I know you're a pretty level-headed guy, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on what's going on there in Cuba from what you know, and where you in relation to the Democratic Party stance right now.
I would say I think Cuba goes a little bit further than being a socialist government and is full on a communist government. I think that the protesters there are fighting for democracy. They're fighting for resources. They are upset about many factors, and I think that it's a good thing that they're flying the American flag in their protests. They're asking for what we represent at our best. So I have no problem with that. I do support them. I support the protesters against the police brutality and the actual government censorship that has been happening there, where the government has actually restricted access to social media by the protesters in order to keep them from getting their message out. I think that is a huge problem that goes so far beyond, you know, the complaints that we have about social media, no matter how valid they are.
And this is why we love you. So thank you for being open-minded to it. Your thoughts, Megan, because I know you kind of queued up this topic for us. So
yeah, I think it's really almost directly related to the whole censorship. I mean, we've already kind of touched on it, but it's extreme censorship, right? So we're arguing about the censorship that Facebook can do when in Cuba, many places, the entire internet is cut off.
Yeah.
You know, they have limited phone service. The cell phones don't work. They have limited television, radio channels. So it's just the same kind of argument, but extreme.
Because
I lost my train of thought, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's where AOC is at, right? Like, and I can post up some of her tweets if you want to see it. But she's finding a way to slam the United States. That's why I liked what Chris said, right? It's like everybody wants to stand on the side of the people, but she's figuring out a way to make it against us. And when he says things like, hey, it's good that they're flying the same flag that's right behind you, it's behind Burke right here, like, that's awesome. Because she's saying, oh, we're contributing to their suffering with our embargoes and putting pressure on the regime, as if it's our fault that they're putting in these like extreme left policies that are ruining the country, right? And they do the same thing with Venezuela. Like, Venezuela did so much of this to themselves, right? And against what the United States was trying to do. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, so she's just echoing the BLM, the socialist turned Marxist talking line here, that the U.S. is responsible for the conditions in Cuba because of the embargoes. But what that really does, it actually admits that free trade is important to economic prosperity, first off. So a little bit of a cell phone by the Marxists in the crowd. But truly, man, this is a thing that all Americans should support, right? Cuba Libre all day long, tendies de polo for all. This is something that's really important that we, as a country, unify behind. And of course, we're not going to, because we can't unify behind anything. And that really is kind of the more sad point here. A house divided cannot stand, right? That's what Lincoln said. And it's true. We live in a country right now where it seems like half of the country doesn't even like this country, where you can go on Twitter. I get really discouraged going on Twitter, Instagram, and I go on Bernie's post, or I'll see any of these, kind of hard left organizations, and it's filled with Americans who hate America. It's filled with young people who legitimately hate America. And it really makes me sad. It really makes me scared, actually, for our future as well, that if we can't unify behind things that are good for the common person, like liberty for the Cuban people, I don't know how much longer we can make it, if I'm being honest with you.
That's a great point. So we'll kind of close this out. We'll get into this topic in some more detail here soon. But Chris, any thoughts? Do you think that? I mean, a lot of people would say that the people who hate America are on the left. Um, is that
Yeah, I think I see a lot of hatred for especially American cities, more on the right, and those would be like, the places where a large portion of Americans live. But there definitely is a tendency on the left to blame America for all of the world's problems and kind of absolve other countries. You see this on I call them tankies, the people who will like come right out and be
Exactly.
fanboys for like the Chinese Communist Party and deny the genocide going on there just because, oh, well, if you heard that in American news, then it's obviously CIA propaganda.
Yeah.
And you see this tendency when it comes to Cuba as well. I do think that the embargo on Cuba should end because, like Kyle, I'm a
Agreed.
huge fan of free trade. But I also think you do have to admit that like other countries have agency and other governments have agency, and they are run by human beings who have the same flaws as greed and corruption that American politicians have. And it is a mistake to just say, America bad, other countries good. It's a lot more complicated than that.
No doubt, no doubt. But I think the point that Kyle was making, and this is what we've got to get into, is a little bit of economics, which I think will be fun. Is because everybody, again, even AOC wants to stand with the people while she's criticizing America more. But we get into this notion of, okay, but you call yourself a democratic socialist. How much socialism are you actually proposing? Because it doesn't seem to take much before we have like this type of disaster start to happen, right? And so I think that's what we got to get into, is maybe look into a couple of these examples of when did it start to go bad? When did this type of like messing with the market and all those things actually start to send them into the current conditions where they can't even get a potato, like Roger was saying. So, and then, what are they proposing when she does things like the Green New Deal and all that stuff? Where is she taking us as a country? And that's, that goes back to Kyle's point. So a lot of great discussion, opened up a whole can of worms, and I knew it, but that's great. So we're going to get into all that stuff here in the next couple episodes. So thank you so much, Chris. As always, we love you to death because you're level-headed. You call it like you see it, and stand up for your points. But you always do it in a really strong, respectful, and well thought way. And I appreciate you for that. Megan as well. Appreciate you bringing this topic to us. It's an awesome one. We're going to be on it, I think, for a few weeks for sure, like we said. And then Kyle always bringing it home with the libertarian and the memes and the killer memes. I love it. Go ahead, buddy.
I just said Cuba Libre. Just want to support that.
I feel like that's going to be at least 3 out of our next 4 memes next week. So bring him. And to everybody who's watching, we had about 10 or 12 folks that were watching live tonight, which is awesome. We all appreciate your comments. They were blowing up on there. Keep sending them in. I'll take a look at them. We'll kind of answer them during the week as well. Keep the discussion going on our Facebook page if they'll let us have it, as well as Twitter, everything else. And you can always check our website. Next show coming up here in about 5 minutes is Conservatism on Tap. We're going to be getting into some specific conservative philosophy. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have Josh Lewis from Saving Elephants podcast on here. So get a drink, meet us back right here on our page in 5 minutes for Conservatism on Tap, and we will see you then.